You are 16 years old. A stranger walks up to you at a mall in Ohio. He says, "You have the look." You don't know what that means exactly, but it sounds like the beginning of something magical. So you say yes. 3 weeks later, you're standing in a tiny, windowless room in Paris. You haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Your feet are bleeding inside shoes that cost more than your parents' car. And someone is screaming at you in French. You don't speak French, but you understand the tone. It means you're doing everything wrong. Welcome to Haute Couture, the most glamorous job in the world. Let's back up, because before Paris, before the bleeding feet, before the screaming, there was the dream. And the dream was everything. You'd seen the magazines, the runway shows, the impossibly beautiful women floating through Paris in clothes that looked like art installations. You wanted that life so badly you could feel it in your chest. What nobody showed you was what happened behind the curtain. And trust me, behind the curtain was a completely different world. Your first agency meeting feels like a job interview crossed with a medical examination. They measure everything: your height, your hips, your waist, your shoulders, the distance between your eyes. An agent looks you up and down the way a butcher examines a cut of meat. She tells you your hips are a centimeter too wide. You are 15 years old and someone just told you your body is mathematically incorrect. Congratulations, you're in the industry now. The measurements that Haute Couture demands are not human measurements. They are architectural specifications. The houses, Chanel, Dior, Givenchy, Valentino, create their masterpieces on specific size standards. Size 0, sometimes smaller, a sample size waist of approximately 23 to 24 inches. For reference, that is roughly the waist size of the average 10-year-old. And the clothes are not adjustable. The clothes are the clothes. Your body must fit the clothes, not the other way around. So begins the second chapter of your story: starvation. Nobody calls it starvation, of course. They call it watching your figure. They call it discipline. They call it professionalism. Bridget Malcolm, a model who walks some of the biggest haute couture shows in the world, wrote openly about this. She described how her highest profile clients came when her hips were at their absolute smallest, 33 inches. And when she gained half an inch from that, half an inch, she lost those clients immediately. They told her directly. Her body no longer looked good enough. Half an inch, the width of your thumb. That was the difference between a career and unemployment. So you learn to live on almost nothing. Black coffee in the morning, maybe an apple at noon, whatever guilt allows at night. You watch your body in every mirror you pass because in this industry, every mirror is a threat. Every reflection is either a relief or a disaster. You develop rituals, counting, measuring, calculating. At some point, you realize you spend more time thinking about food than anything else in your life, but you never actually eat it. That's the cruel joke haute couture plays on you. The industry that puts you in $50,000 dresses can't afford to feed you properly. Now let's talk about the actual clothes, because the clothes, the clothes. Here's what the magazines don't explain. Haute couture is not designed for comfort. It is not designed for movement. It is not designed for human beings. It is designed to look extraordinary standing completely still. The moment you try to walk in it, everything becomes a negotiation with physics. Alexander McQueen's Spring 2010 collection featured shoes called armadillos. Platforms so extreme they measured over 12 inches high. Lady Gaga famously wore them in a music video. But the models who walked the runway in them had a slightly different experience. Imagine being handed shoes that look like abstract sculpture, being told you have approximately 4 minutes to practice walking in them, and then being pushed onto a runway in front of hundreds of industry professionals. Cameras everywhere, nowhere to fall gracefully. The models who didn't fall that night called it the most terrifying 4 minutes of their professional lives. The ones who wobbled slightly never got called back. But falling isn't even the worst thing that can happen on a haute couture runway. The worst thing is what happens to your body inside the clothes. One model, working a major Parisian show, described being sewn into her dress backstage. Not zipped, not buttoned. Sewn directly onto her body. The seamstresses worked fast, pulling fabric impossibly tight, stitching her into the garment with actual needle and thread. She stood completely rigid while they worked. because moving would break the stitches. She walked the runway, she came back, and they cut her out of the dress with scissors. If she needed to use the bathroom during that time, she didn't. She simply didn't. The corsets inside haute couture gowns would make Victorian women feel nostalgic. Some garments have internal boning structures so rigid they function like external skeletons. A model wearing a fully structured Dior couture gown described feeling her ribs compress with every breath. Not metaphorically, literally. Each inhale was a small battle against the garment. She learned to breathe in shallow sips. In, out. Just enough, never a full breath. For the entire runway show. That's approximately 8 minutes of restricted breathing while walking in front of the world. And smiling. Always smiling. Let's talk about the shoes again, because there is more to say about the shoes. Gisele Bündchen, who became one of the most successful models in history, once recalled arriving at a shoot early in her career. She couldn't speak much English yet. She asked what she would be wearing for the shoot. Nobody answered clearly. She found out when they brought out the outfit. She started crying immediately. And then she did the job anyway, because that's what you do. You cry in the corner, and then you go back out there. The backstage of a haute couture show is controlled chaos dressed as organization. 40 models, maybe more, crammed into a space designed for 10, each one in a different stage of transformation. Hair pulled and pinned and sprayed into architectural shapes. Makeup applied with the intensity of surgery. Garments being steamed, adjusted, stitched in real time. Stylists shouting, designers pacing, someone always crying. Usually quietly, in the corner, where nobody official can see. You have approximately 90 seconds between your first look and your second look to change completely. 90 seconds to strip out of one impossible garment and be sewn into another. Dressers grab you from every direction, pulling, tucking, pinning. You are not a person in this moment. You are a moving surface for art. And the art must be perfect, even if you are not. Naomi Campbell fell on the Saint Laurent runway in 1993, wearing platform shoes so elevated they have since become museum exhibits. She fell, in front of everyone, on one of the most watched runways in the world. And what did she do? She laughed, got up, finished the walk, and became more iconic for the fall than most models become in entire careers. But Naomi Campbell is one in a million. For every Naomi Campbell who falls and rises, there are hundreds of models who fall and simply disappear. Never booked again. Because the industry has an infinite supply of the next 16-year-old standing in a mall in Ohio, hearing that she has the look. The money situation would shock you. Because when you imagine haute couture, you imagine wealth. You imagine the models being paid enormous sums to wear these extraordinary creations. And sometimes that's true, for the top 0.1%. For everyone else? A designer once shared openly that even with a major couture house, even with his clothes in glossy magazines, even with celebrities wearing his work, he was living hand-to-mouth every single month. If that's the designer, imagine the model. Many models in their first years of haute couture work are paid in exposure, actual quote, exposure, which does not pay rent in Paris, which does not replace the meals you skipped to fit the sample size, which does not cover the cost of the shoes you were expected to provide yourself. Yes, sometimes the models provide their own shoes. For a $50,000 runway show, the model pays for her shoes. The psychological cost accumulates quietly. A study by the Model Alliance found that 68.3% of models admitted to suffering from anxiety and depression. Not a small percentage, not a minority. 68%. More than half. Living in cities where they don't speak the language, separated from family, competing against people who look almost identical to them. Being told constantly that their body is either perfect or 1 centimeter from disaster. Receiving jobs not because of talent or intelligence or personality, but because of the specific distance between their cheekbones. And when that distance changes even slightly with age, the phone stops ringing. Without explanation, without warning. Just silence. The silence is the part nobody prepares you for. One day you are relevant. The houses call, the agencies call. Your face appears in campaigns, you walk shows, you exist, and then you don't. The industry moves to the next face, the next body, the next 16-year-old in a mall. And you are expected to understand this, to accept it gracefully, to disappear without complaint. Because making noise, making demands, asking for basic dignity or fair pay or reasonable working conditions gets you labeled difficult. And difficult models don't get booked, so they stay quiet, and they disappear quietly. And the shows go on. Meanwhile, the dresses they wore, those extraordinary, impossible, painful, beautiful garments, end up in museums, in exhibitions, in glass cases, preserved forever, admired forever, described in detail. The suffering that went into wearing them? Not mentioned. Never mentioned. So the next time you see a Haute Couture runway show, the extraordinary clothes, the perfect expressions, the impossible grace, remember what you know now. The model hasn't eaten since yesterday. She's breathing in sips inside a corset that functions like a vice. Her feet are bleeding inside shoes that cost more than your rent. She has 90 seconds to change between looks. She might be paid in exposure, she might be 16, and she is smiling. Because in Haute Couture, the show must always go on, even when everything underneath it is barely holding together. And somewhere right now, a stranger is walking up to a teenager in a mall, saying she has the look, and the cycle begins again. Next time on Fashnoir, we go even deeper into the fashion world's darkest secrets. Because trust me, it gets worse. Make sure you're subscribed, because fashion history is just getting started.